there was, in fact, a power outage earlier. Well, that's we literally had everything go down right in front of my face here. Now we're looking at several minutes before things are going to come back up. I do hope that you're able to find where I'm at right now, because I think by the time I get everything booted back up, the existing stream will have been discontinued. So in that vein, we were talking about Viktor Orban, and understand I've got a lot of stuff that I have now lost that I can't look at while things are booting up. But Viktor Orban made his a visit with Zelensky just in the last few days here, and he came to Zelensky with the proposal that there should be a ceasefire, and the ceasefire should be what's taken care of, what's actually the first step in the peace process. Now, this sounds all well and good. You know, you would think that would, any other normal conversation that might happen for the purposes of peace, I think that would be a valid starting point. The problem is that at this point, Russia has absolutely shown themselves to be an unreliable partner in the peace process for multiple other situations: Chechnya, Georgia, etc. They've been all over the world doing negative things, and each time they've had a ceasefire, they have used it to build back stronger once again. So again, I do apologize for the power outage. It literally was just full flat down. I've got things coming back up right now, and I will try and get things switched over as soon as I can. But understand, I do apologize, and hope that you are understanding. A bit of a storm going on. So Orban made his visit. He made his proposal, and basically a ceasefire to be the first step in a supposed peace process. Ukraine basically said, I don't think so, with the basic response being that if Russia wants to stop fighting, Russia can stop fighting on the other side of the border back in Russia, not on this side of the border. So overall, it looks like Orban, I don't know, just a few minutes while things are still coming up over here. This thing really totally took a dive over here. There was a full power outage for about 3 seconds, just long enough to make sure everything stopped working. Anyway, so my opinion on the situation, I think Orban, I think there's a few things going on with Orban, though I'm not sure. I mean, I have no way of proving any of it. So I believe that now that they are the council president, Orban feels that he needs to put his mark on the peace process with Ukraine, and if he can do it in favor of Putin, even better. Overall, that doesn't mean that's everything there is to know about it. It's of a what would it take to get Viktor Orban on Ukraine's side. I don't think he is just yet. He's made some comments to indicate he might be. I mean, understand, Orban's a politician in every sense of the word. He's absolutely going to play every angle that he can. By the way, I'm on my cell phone right now, in case you couldn't tell. And I'm going to try and switch over. Let me see, do we have anything here that's still valid? Okay, hold on. Eric. Run normally. Do I have everything still in position? Yes, I know this is pretty crazy. So I wish I could see your comments right now. That would really help. It would really help a lot. That's the disadvantage, I suppose, of streaming from my cell phone for a little bit. Let's see, do we have? Okay, bear with me. I'm trying seeing what I can pull back together and online. Okay. All right. So that, discard, grab this, properties. Come on, computer. I think that we may have taken a bigger fry than I really expected here. Much anyway. Lost the cell. Did you lose the cell phone as well? Well, I'm trying my best here. Hi, Daily Dose. Glad to see you there. Still trying to get things back online over here. Had a power outage in the middle of the stream here. Let's see. It doesn't say the stream is over yet. That's kind of weird. Yeah, I'm trying to fix the tech here. All right, Jerry, glad to hear it. And Marshall, glad to have you here. Ozzy, yeah, the cell's working. I'm going to probably have to do it this way, and that's going to be kind of weird today. So bear with me as we keep on trucking here. Let's see. Yep, we're just going to have to do this the hard way, so I do apologize. Let's just keep it going. All right, so what I'll do is, since I'm using my cell phone, I'm going to try my best to quickly flip back and forth between the seeing what's going on my screen by using my camera, which is weird, but we'll keep on trucking with it. We'll have to deal with the software issues that are involved here. Basically, it came down to Orban said, let's do a ceasefire. And the response to that was, we need a just peace, as President Zelensky said right here. Not one that is a cold peace, cold war, effectively, but one that is justice for Ukraine. They were definitely the attacked party in this regard. There's no reason to believe that that they will be treated properly by Russia in the long term. Moving along, President Zelensky did state that they could negotiate with Russia through intermediaries. The direct negotiations has not been working for them overall, and so there's a lot, just a ton of. They've been able to work through intermediary countries before, and they're hoping that maybe something could be pulled out of it. But again, it has to be a just peace for them. Now, Anton Herischenko did go through kind of some of the points on the negotiations here. Hungary is ready to support the modernization of the Ukrainian economy, and Ukraine and Hungary plan to sign an international cooperation agreement. Hungary intends to help Ukraine during its presidency of the EU Council, and they did agree to open the first school for Ukrainian-speaking children in Hungary. We are trying to close all previous disputes and focus on the future. We want to establish relations between our countries, according to Orban. So this is potentially the most likely reason why you might think that Orban might be on board with helping out Ukraine. Are they? I am not convinced. That said, the fact that he made the visit at all is a big change compared to how things have been going in the past. Oops, sorry. So maybe, I wouldn't say I'm optimistic. I'm neutral at this point as to the situation with Orban. Maybe it will have some positive benefits, but maybe it won't. In other news, there was an attack on a Ukrainian airfield called Mihrad And the Russians have been crowing about it extensively. That's right, they're stating that they had destroyed two Su-27 fighters, along with damaging two additional ones, and they provide this video that goes with it. Now, there's some issues with that video. This is, for one thing, the timing of things didn't really pan out right. The before and the after seemed different on the before the attack and after the attack. However, the Ukrainians are acknowledging the attack, and they're stating that, well, let me just read this right here. It is a war, and unfortunately, not without losses of equipment. I am talking about the enemy attack on Mirhorod airfield. There was an attack. There are some losses, but not the ones the enemy is claiming. So the overall look to, then of course the Kyiv Post actually did an analysis of the actual videos and things like that. It's tightly edited. There were images of Mirhorod. It showed that some things had happened there. They're saying 5 jets destroyed, 2 damaged, 25 ground crew eliminated. But overall, the editing of the video doesn't really jive with their reported effect. Now, there is some people theorizing that the actual effect was that the airplanes had been parked for a very long time. And as parked aircraft, they were probably being parted out, which would mean that even if they were destroyed, there is loss. And if so, it's still not a good thing. Either way, Ukraine went ahead and did an aerial attack on Crimea to respond, saying, see, we've still got our airplanes even now. You can't destroy us that easily. So overall, I think this is a combination of propaganda and propaganda and misinformation, and basically working their way through everything to try and get it done. So overall, there was likely damage, likely less than the Russians are claiming. Ukraine was very cautious about how they stated everything and made it pretty clear that they weren't going to give a full battle damage assessment of the attack on Mirhorod airfield. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next tidbit of news. One of the things that was struck in Crimea, though this was 3 or even 4 days ago now, there was the potential destruction of Russia's S-500 air defense radar by cluster munition ATACMS. This would be the first confirmed destruction of any part of this complex, and with the system being their latest and greatest, it's clear there might be some issues there confirming this attack. Nobody has provided video that I've seen, but I've heard that it was confirmed through multiple sources. And overall, that's the situation as we know it at this time. Was the S-500 complex effectively taken out of action? I consider it likely, because there's not that much difference between the S-500 and the S-400 or 300. It is a newer system, and it is their latest system, but overall, they're still using the same general technology as before. Speaking of disinformation for a moment or two, let's go ahead and pop over to this one. This fake video and fake documents has gone around to 2.6 million people. And yet this is a deep fake video with an AI-written disinformation site. They didn't even delete the keywords they used to get AI to generate the article and the video. And the general gist of what they wrote was that President Zelensky's wife bought a Bugatti, which is a very high-end sports car. They claimed to have the documents showing that it was there, that they bought it, everything else like that. Well, there's more to this than meets the eye. For one thing, Bugatti Paris has put out an actual statement on the issue denouncing the disinformation campaign. They've already filed a criminal complaint for forgery, the use of forgeries, usurpation of identity, and defamation. That's right. They even went so far as to put out this press release stating that no, that the document in question showing this Bugatti being sold did not have the mandatory legal details. The price is wrong. The price of the options in their descriptions is inaccurate and inconsistent. They used the wrong graphics. They would have not ever allowed this document as it was to be issued, and therefore it's a fake. So once again, as Chris O states, incredibly dumb propaganda by a propagandist so incredibly dumb that he literally includes the instructions from the people tasking him. So yes, the Kremlin's disinformation campaigns are kind of like this little video right here, which I hope I can get to come up here. This is another AI-generated video. Come on, bring it up. Yeah, I do realize that I'm actually doing most of my, obviously the stream is from my cell phone, not my home computer. But let's do a refresh here. Maybe it'll come through. Come on. There we go. Yes, this is an AI-generated video. Yes, that's very realistic there. Did you see that rifle with like 3 different lower receivers and everything? Oh, yeah. They're really awful at this job when you really start nailing them down. All right, so I'm going to take a moment here to flip around to my face. My apologies. You're going to have to deal with my face for a moment or two. Yes, I do type really fast, Aussie. And you are correct. They have hit that airbase actually multiple times at this point. The fact that it's still in question as to what they're doing, it's pretty. They have not been on top of this for a while. Not really. The truth is that the forward airfields like this one would not be actively used for combat operations. They almost can't be. So anything that's actually truly valuable is going to be farther back. Now, they may have parked vehicles and equipment there to be able to strip those units down to get parts and things like that. But overall, I don't think it's going to be as much damage as Russia would like to believe. Hi, Luciano. Glad to see you. So I had a power outage here. Everything is totally screwed up for my computers at the house. So I switched over to my cell phone. So this is going to be the super weirdest stream I think we've ever done with everything going on here. I do hope that you're still getting the gist of it. Let me know how it's going for you as well, all of you. So just pipe in, let me know if you're able to see everything, understand what I'm saying. With everything just kind of being slapped together in a hurry, there's no way of telling exactly what or when I'm going to know what's going on. Well, absolutely. If I've got a way to stream and get it out there, I'm not going to give up on trying. Let's go ahead and move on to the news out of Ukraine itself. More than 3,000 prisoners, that would be Ukrainian prisoners, have been released on parole and assigned to military units following the approval of a mobilization bill by the Ukrainian parliament. That about 27,000 inmates could be eligible for this program. So they're now being offered to be released in exchange for joining the fight. This basically puts Ukraine in the same position Russia was in a year and a half ago, where Russia was emptying their prisons and sending them over to Wagner. There we go. To actually fight in Ukraine. A lot of them, as they call them, meat cubes that we're seeing in the battlefield, are from these penal battalions here, not from their primary normal combat units. Interestingly, Ukraine is now listed as the 18th global military superpower. That's according to the 2024 Global Firepower Military Strength Rating. It was considered 22nd in 2022 and 15th in 2023, which means they've actually dropped a little bit in their overall rankings. So it just tells you exactly how much the work of Western assistance has really made a difference in Ukraine. 10 Ukrainians were returned from Russian captivity, including notable figures like Nariman Dezal, the deputy chairman of the Mejlis of Crimean Tatar people, and 2 Ukrainian Greek Orthodox Church priests. The released individuals had been held captive since 2017 through 2018 in various locations, including occupied Crimea and Belarus. So this, to the people who like to declare that Ukraine is oppressing Christian peoples, they're getting them back from captivity. That is what they're really doing. The Ukrainians truly support Christian peoples, and they do it in actions, in truth. This story about Stanislav Asayev, a Ukrainian writer, is interesting. He's a journalist and activist who joined the armed forces. He got a shrapnel injury to his neck, stating, "A miracle happened to me again. This piece of shrapnel entered my neck, missed the artery, and got stuck in soft tissue. And a fragment that got into my chest did not penetrate the lung. Another one was pulled out of my ear." He said he was doing fine. So you don't think of writers as being your typical, soldier. They typically are pushing a pin more than a grenade. But this is a man who knew that he needed to be part of liberating his country, even if he was a writer instead. And so far, it sounds like he's been well protected. Now, this one I'm going to state is coming from Ukraine's side, so take it with a slight grain of salt here. However, I believe the numbers are generally accurate based on all the other visual losses that the Russians have suffered. Russian losses in Ukraine recently passed another milestone, with a total number of tanks claimed destroyed by Kyiv passing the 8,000 mark. As of July 1, the figure stands at 8,099, according to Ukraine's general staff. Now, you have to understand that my understanding is that Russia started the conflict with around 3,000 active tanks. That means that they have lost every tank they had, effectively, a second batch of every tank, and are well on their way to losing a third batch of the same number of tanks. So overall, this should give you kind of a hint as to how much armor is being lost in Ukraine. President Zelensky also claimed that the personnel losses at this stage of the war is 1 to 6. 1 Ukrainian to 6 Russians. Now, again, just take this with a grain of salt. It's probably pretty close. Maybe 1 to 5. Could be 1 to 5.5. But could even be 1 to 6.5. We don't know those exact numbers. But overall, that should give you a baseline for the lowest possible number of Ukrainian casualties. Ukrenergo, that would be Ukraine's energy provider, gave a positive outlook, I should say. They're expecting things to improve by August. They are having to do a lot of repairs to their energy infrastructure. And when the repairs at some nuclear power plants are completed, it will provide more available capacity, while changes in the weather are also expected to help. Ukraine's SBU has found 3 more FSB agents in Odessa. The funky pink wig and other things were intended to cover them up and allow them to pass undetected amongst Ukrainian life. But they were found and arrested by Ukrainians' SBU. This one, I actually sent a message over to Robbie, who has relatives in Ukraine, to ask him about his thoughts. And this is, Ukraine has entered the list of upper middle income countries for the first time in its history, according to the World Bank. So I theorized about this one for a little bit. I'm going to just flip this over a bit here. And I thought to myself, what would cause this to happen? And when I talked to Robbie, he suggested that the people that have left the country, evacuated to other areas, are women and children, which means the raw number of unemployed individuals has reduced in Ukraine. meaning that the remainder are making effectively more money per capita inside the country. Now, we're not talking big numbers here. Ukraine's income is estimated to be about 5070 per capita. That'd be $5,070 compared to the previous figure of 4,270 per capita. So this is quite a change in the for Ukraine in this regard. But in the end, this is still not a reflection of what civilian life will be like when after the war, when people start returning home and returning to rebuild their country. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be coming back that don't have employment. That said, there'll be lots of work opportunities with the way Russia's been going. Speaking of Russia, let's go ahead and move on to the news out of Russia itself. Lucille states the slight drop in military might ranking probably also reflects the military buildups in European countries preparing to take on Russia if it becomes essential. I'm not necessarily opposed to that interpretation. It seems as valid as any, and countries are probably preparing their militaries for the potential war. Moving on to the news out of Ukraine, we'll start with the UK's Ministry of Defense. Let me back this up. This will be kind of hard to read. I'll try and keep my phone still for this. You won't be able to hear it. I think it's just music. All right, the video is not coming through. I'm going to have to reboot everything. Russia is increasingly utilizing pro-Russian irregular forces in offensive operations. These forces are unprepared, untrained, and lack artillery or air support, making them more vulnerable than their regular counterparts. Basically, this is if you took, maybe a police unit and tossed it onto the front lines. Police officers are more trained than the average civilian, but they are less trained for warfare than the average soldier. Now, that said, a lot of police officers are former military, so there'd probably be plenty in there. But if they have that experience, the odds are they're already in the military in Ukraine. So this would be paramilitary forces, irregular forces, meaning civilians that are basically banded together to form units, that type of thing. These people don't have the same training or abilities as Russia's regular forces that receive full training. And I would contend that the indications are that Russia does not have any fully trained forces even available to send to Ukraine at this point in time. They have effectively burned through their best trained forces already, and they're now on to what they've got left. While speaking at the St. Petersburg International Legal Forum on June 27, 2024, the head of the Russian Investigative Committee, Alexander Bystrykin, claimed that Russian authorities had identified 30,000 migrants who had recently become Russian citizens who are not registered for military service. Bystrykin further boasted that 10,000 of these had already been sent to the operational zone in Ukraine. Bystrykin claimed these migrants would dig trenches and conduct other duties in the rear areas. Now, Russian independent media had previously reported that Russian law enforcement had been doing basically raids to basically recruit people, but this was particularly among the Central Asian and migrants there in an attempt to make them enlist in the military. This is another means of bolstering the military without actually having to pull off a regular mobilization, hoping to try and prevent the populace from suffering the ill effects of Putin's war. This, I believe, is the Kursk region here, going from memory. A powerful fire broke out in Kursk today. A huge column of black smoke arose over the city skyline. The acting governor reported only that the fire had been localized with no additional details. He wrote that 60 people and 10 pieces of equipment took part in extinguishing the fire. Local residents say that there are military warehouses and a military hospital under construction in that area. Journalist Jason J. Smart put a little bit more information there, though. The Central Aviation Technical Base is on fire after a series of explosions. Now, this incident occurred back on June 23rd, but is only now getting reported. A Russian Su-25 aircraft was shot down by the National Guard using manpads in the Donetsk region. This incident occurred on June 23rd, as I indicated before. And on June 29th, 2 drones attacked military unit 54169 in Toropets region, causing a fire. Neither the regional authorities nor the Russian Ministry of Defense reported the incident, but this is following a previous drone attack on the same unit on May 5th, which also resulted in a fire. So I don't know what's special about this unit. I don't know why they target it in particular, but that is at least what Ukraine's doing with at least some of their drones. Ukrainian drones also struck a 500 kilovolt substation in the Belgorod region, leaving most of the region without electricity throughout the day. Basically, a little bit of turnabout is fair play. They also struck several other regions overnight. This is as of June 30th right here, with Russia claiming they shot them all down, but these burning fires kind of suggest that something was not shot down, but in fact impacted, with both in the Kursk, Lipetsk, Voronezh, Bryansk, and Oryol regions. Glide bombs launched by Russia into Ukraine have been frequently landing on Russian territory. That's between April 2023 and April 2024. At least 38 bombs fell on the Belgorod region, with most failing to explode. So you got a combination of Russians dropping ordnance on their own country and that ordnance not actually exploding. Lovely. Anders Puck Nielsen is an analyst about this type of war here. And he asks, which will end first, Putin's regime or the war? And he states that Russia is actually deliberately trying to commit war crimes. He wants the world to know about them, as Moscow is seeking to challenge the international rules-based order. This is how Russia intends to try to basically topple the U.S. and the European Union as being the guys in charge of what's going on in the world. You know, basically the ones with all the economic and political power. And if he can get if he can commit these war crimes without getting called onto the carpet for them, this challenges the world to actually show that they are, to show their purpose. If they're not going to counter Russia in this, how can they be in charge of the world? For lack of a better way to say it. A hurricane apparently hit St. Petersburg, and the death toll has risen to 3. This kind of caught me off guard, and I wasn't sure where it came from. I'm not familiar with the weather in St. Petersburg, but I'm pretty sure it's not all that close to hurricane-generating areas. So, interesting, and I'm wondering if it might be a translation issue where it's just a severe storm rather than a hurricane. Not quite sure. In Russia, prices are growing faster than in the recently increased forecast of the central bank. The bank will revise its forecast in July. Home mortgages have now shot up to 19.5% interest, and other prices are starting to skyrocket as well as Russia starts to experience the effects of greatly increasing inflation. Russian propagandists are not, basically they're not quibbling at all. They're not mincing words. They state outright that Ukraine as a state should entirely cease to exist, with no statehood at all. Russia wants all of Ukraine, and appeasing Russia is playing into their hands. Going back to Belgorod for just a moment or two, there have been dozens of incidents over the last 4 days, and the latest one appears to be a Fab 3000 dropping on the Belgorod region. So once again, we're seeing a lot of indications that Russia is dropping their own bombs on their own territory. Brief pause here. How's everything going? Are you guys able to see all right? Everything is really messed up right now over here. So it's going to be the whole rest of the stream is going to be with this cell phone. So I hope you're able to hear me okay. And therefore, so we can keep on going. In the meantime, let's go ahead and move on to the international front and see what kind of news we have there. We'll start off with the Institute for the Study of War. There we go. Let me back up a bit. This one's kind of hard to get framed in properly. The Russian Ministry of Defense has boasted that Russian authorities have increased detention and prosecutions related to illegal migration into Russia while calling for intensified Russian government crackdowns against illegal migration. Translation, if you show up in Russia, you're likely to end up sent to the front, not sent back home. Russia has assumed its 1 month long rotating presidency of the UN Security Council on July 1st. Since for the first time since April 2023, they're expected to, abuse their position of power as a way to project power on the international system. So expect the UN to do some weird things for the next month. South Korea's Ministry of Unification announced on July 1st that North Korean state TV channel Korean Central TV switched to transmitting broadcasts via Russian satellites instead of Chinese, reportedly affecting South Korea's ability to monitor North Korean state TV. And finally, Hungary has taken up the rotating presidency of the European Union. The U.S. announced a new military aid package, which they have not yet specified exactly what, worth $2.3 billion. It's actually dollars, not euros. That is a slight difference there. They're expected to announce what that's going to entail in the next few days. Finland is allocating a military aid package worth 159 million euros to Ukraine. They are not giving the specifics of the shipment, not even the date or the contents, nothing disclosed, which is a much better version of the security than we have seen in previous activities. Ukraine is going to receive a $2.2 billion, I think it's a loan, but I'm not sure, but $2.2 billion from the International Monetary Fund. This is to help with their budget expenditures, social benefits, salaries, all the things that they really can't afford to pay while the rest of their money is going to warfare. Now, the next bit we've got is coming from the OSCE, or Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Oh, for heaven's sake, seriously, do I have it? No, that's the correct time. Or is it the correct time? What time is it now? Let's see. That's going to be funny if I can't do this one. Yeah, 9:40. Oh, yeah, okay. That's 7:43. That is wrong. Man, everything's screwed up. I'm going to have to reboot everything when I get done. Bear with me for just a second here. Oh, I remember what the OSCE said. Since I can't get to the website right now, they actually called Russia's war in Ukraine a genocide and made a lot of comments about it in that regard. So even the OSCE is starting to call it what it is. Turkey, Bulgaria, and Romania have started demining operations in the Black Sea. That's to increase the safety of shipping, in particular for Ukrainian grain exports. Overall, since the Russians have been mining the area, this is how they're going to counter that, is by having these other countries take on the mine-sweeping operations. The Dutch government has provided export licenses for the F-16. This will allow the transfer of its fighter jets to Ukraine, with a total of 24 anticipated being sent. In the meantime, just so you know, this is going to be hard to see. Never mind, the orientation's locked. The U.S. Democrats are urging the Pentagon to scale up the amount of Ukrainian pilots training on the F-16. So more F-16s on the way. Hopefully more pilots may follow. On the other end of the stick, the European Union has introduced an emergency brake on eggs, sugar, and sugar imports from Ukraine. Basically, if they hit the same value that they did before the war and start to exceed it, they can be basically held back by the European Union to prevent them from exporting more to the bloc. NATO is intending to establish a new post in Kyiv, which will, quote, Trump-proof Ukraine aid. Basically, they're intending to coordinate aid outside of the United States so that any disruption in U.S. aid will not result in a reduction to Ukraine itself. Ukraine and the Gambia have revived diplomatic relations after 20 years. They are now making a renewal of high contact relations with a conversation between President Zelensky and Gambian leader Adama Barrow. Now, I could not figure out why the tiny African country of the Gambia might have had a bit of a tiff with Ukraine, but it just looks like Ukraine is really working on the charm offensive, trying to get more people on their side as time goes on. Finland has approved a defense pact with the United States. This will give the U.S. the authorization to deploy U.S. troops on Finnish soil, as well as military hardware. Overall, this looks like it's a standard defense cooperation agreement, but the Finns are pretty motivated to make sure that the Russians can't take advantage of anything in the near future. And having U.S. troops there would be a big way to prevent the Russians from doing anything negative. Poland actually, for a brief period, restricted the entry of Ukrainian trucks that didn't have a permit for international freight transport. They've now gone back on that and have resumed the passage of trucks with Customs and Borders Protection, not requiring any permits for bilateral transportation. Everything with Poland gets a little bit complicated, it feels like lately. Stolen Ukrainian wheat is being exported from Sevastopol to Venezuela. A vessel, the Russian Federation NSA, arrived from Arkhangelsk to the occupied annexed territory, where it stayed and loaded 27,000 tons of Melitopol wheat. They have now weighed anchor, and their port of destination is supposed to be Puerto Cabello in Venezuela. And that's the international front for a bit here. We'll pause here. It's a different one, Robbie. That's a really different one today. Glad you could make it. And it's just a little bit weird with the power outages causing all kinds of crazy things to happen. I'm going to have a fun time putting all the pieces back together, I can tell you that. Now we're moving on to the front lines, though, so glad you all are sticking it out and happy to have you here, even for this really weird stream today. Now, I was originally planning to show this video to you and read the soldiers' words here, but let me give you Anton Herashchenko's summary here. Russian soldier and MP Alexander Borodai is outraged that Russians are being disinformed about the halt of the Ukrainian armed forces offensive. He claims that, in fact, the situation on all front lines is very difficult, and the Ukrainian army is not suffering from a shortage of ammunition. And it looks like the video finally started to play here. And he says that the Ukrainians have cluster munitions, plenty of cells. They're dealing with constant bombardments and intensive artillery preparation, indicating that Ukraine may, in fact, be on the move in parts of the front lines. And we'll talk about that as we go. The Defense Intelligence update from the UK talks about the situation in Kharkiv. And I've got quite a bit about Kharkiv today. So let's go ahead and divert into Kharkiv for just a moment here. In Volchansk, Kharkiv Oblast, fighting is reportedly focused on the aggregate plant. Now, this is from 2 days ago, and things may have adjusted a little bit since then, but not a lot so far. Ukrainian forces are attempting to dislodge Russian forces from this strong point, and the town remains contested. No confirmed Russian advances have been made around Chasiv Yar over the last 72 hours. Combat has reportedly been most intense at Ivanivske and Klishivka to the south of the town. Ukrainian forces have reportedly counterattacked in Klishivka, making tactical gains. In the Kharkiv direction, west of Donetsk City, Kharkiv, there we go, west of Donetsk City, Russian forces have made further advances within the town of Krasnohorivka and are likely now in control of most of the town, with the Ukrainian forces only present in the extreme north of the settlement. The Avdiivka-Pokrovsk sector remains the probable Russian main effort and continues to see the highest Russian operational tempo. Russian forces have made minor advances across a relatively broad front towards the villages of New York, Pivnichny, and Pivdenie. Over the next week, the Avdiivka-Pokrovsk sector is likely to remain an area of significant operational focus for Russian forces as they attempt to maintain pressure on defending Ukrainian forces and make opportunistic territorial gains. So a lot of areas are pretty well held still right now, but Ukrainians have counterattacked in some areas. The Russians have continued to attack in others. Both sides are making small amounts of progress, is how it goes. Russia did launch an attack on the city of Kherson, and we've not talked about Kherson much for a while now. This is the first real report we've had of Kherson itself in a while, and it indicates that the Russians are not giving up on this area just yet. Now, as my understanding is, the Ukrainians still maintain a force on the south side of the river. I don't know what its current status is. I've not seen anything lately. But the Russians aren't claiming they're gone either. So I've been trying to follow up on it. Ukraine control map for their July 1st update states that there was no real changes. The front remains relatively static. Then there's the deep state map. They've done some redesign of this with updated settings. I have not gone through everything yet. I don't need units or anything like this right here. We're going to take those off. Everything is all new and updated here. Okay, so, and yes, my internet connection is bad right now. So I'm going to try and remember where everything is at on the fly. This would be near the area of Bakhmut, northwest of Bakhmut. By my nope, that is not Bakhmut. That is outside of Donetsk. There we go. They're Avdiivka. The Russians have made additional advances there. The Volodymyrivka. This would be down just to the southeast here. Not an area that we talk about much. There's been some changes there. Harlivka, there we go. Krasnohorivka, New York, Chasiv Yar, and Makivka. So there have been some advances according to the deep state map. However, deep state map tends to be a day or two behind. So therefore, expect that these are probably updates from the last couple of days. Wargonzo, the Russian source here, basically gives us the scoop as being the lines have not significantly changed. In Zaporizhia, Donetsk, there have been some back and forth, but no significant changes to the lines of control over the last 24 hours. Chasiv Yar, fighting continues in the suburb of Chasiv Yar. He claims more tactical successes for the Russians. Probably true would be my analysis on that. And over in Kharkiv, no real changes with the lines of control. Null Reports kind of gives a little bit more information here with the Russian regaining a foothold in Kalinivka and making progress inside the forest plantation. Dynamic situation, they say. West of Avdiivka, Russia moves forward, though less fast. Now, they've not been moving very fast at all, so this means that it's a slow slog for the Russians. Another thing about the Kherson region here, there was a strong fire started after several explosions in Novokhovka on the occupied left bank. So that area is still getting some action and activity. I just don't have a good feel for exactly how much or why. Over near Luhansk, the Russians advanced towards the outskirts of Stelmakivka. They've just gotten some geolocated footage confirming this, so I believe this was from a couple of days ago, and now new attacks are being expected in the area. This is from July 30th, so there's been no changes since. And in Soledar area, the Russian forces have established themselves inside Rozdalivka, with them occupying over half the village. Kharkiv itself, just some commentary here. The ex-Polish defense minister declared the Ukrainian defense of Kharkiv an unconditional success. Now, I'll tell you honestly, I don't like this framing because there is certainly a lot of conditions with the Ukrainian success. Unconditional success would indicate that the Russians never managed to successfully get across the border in any significant numbers. That said, Ukraine has done a tremendous job of countering Russia's assaults into the area. So that's a, shall we say, rosy analysis of the situation. From the Kyiv Post, Putin's normal grinding attritional tactics are failing in Vovchansk. This indicates that the Russians are really struggling to get anything done in the Kharkiv area. They've been throwing less and less trained troops into the area. They've been doing a lot of things, but even those are not making the progress they originally hoped to have. Null Reports actually adds a Forbes article that says the Russians may have lost an entire airborne brigade in Vovchansk. And their overall analysis seems to indicate that the Ukrainians have the initiative in the area. Two Russian brothers, Igor and Evgeny Valatov, were dumped in during an assault in Vovchansk. The brigade commanders, they had a lot of injuries and they had significant losses in their unit, but they were sent in anyway. And they recorded an appeal to Putin asking for intervention and assistance. Everything hurts, they said. We are all wounded and we simply have no strength. Why send such people, all the wounded, disabled, to battle? And that's the situation in the Kharkiv direction. Now, quite a bit of things happened in Crimea over the last 4 days. There was a missile strike on a Russian Black Sea Fleet facility near Cape Violent in occupied Sevastopol that destroyed a warehouse containing 90 Shahed 136 or Geran 2 drones. They didn't have information on casualties. They also reportedly struck a dacha, the premises near Shkelkino. No report on the damages to it. These are reported as private cottages. I need more information on this one to make any kind of a call on it. Russian warehouses were hit near Balaklia. And more reports of an ammunition depot. So there will be repeated strikes on ammunition depots and warehouses in Crimea. Once again, it appears that Ukraine is softening up everything they can about Crimea. This talks about the logistics center of the Russian Black Sea Fleet being damaged. This is near Sevastopol, so I think it's the same one as that one. This would be that had already been hit by a missile back in September. And overall, this is just another hit on vital infrastructure for Russia's war effort. The Kerch Bridge, kind of interesting. They've actually started building, let's see if I can get a picture here, bunkers. I'm not sure how to describe it, but pillboxes is how they describe it. There's active construction of defensive structures, including concrete pillboxes at the arched span of the bridge. They actually set up an auxiliary bridge in order to carry out this work. Now, Russia's claimed that they aren't using the bridge for any military purpose. I don't necessarily fully believe that, except for Ukraine has also said that they're not currently using it for military purposes. So that's possible. They're putting a lot of effort into protecting this bridge. And everybody says, well, why hasn't Ukraine just taken it out? Well, Russia's investing a lot of money into protecting a bridge that currently has a minimal amount of military value. That's concrete, that's manpower, that's time, that's money, all things that they're investing in the protection of this bridge. So overall, right now, the Kerch Bridge is a money sink for Russia. Ever since the assault or the takeover of Crimea by Russia, back in 2014, the birth rate is falling and the death rate is growing. That's 10 years of negative population growth in Crimea. One of the many effects of the Russian or Ruski Mir. From Crimean Wind, Ukraine is freeing the skies over Crimea so that other means of fire destruction, not just missiles, can operate. Ukraine is consistently fulfilling its promise of a hot season in annexed Crimea. They are methodically working to destroy the Russian air defense system on the peninsula and opening the way for further strikes on military facilities of the occupiers, airfields, weapons depots, logistics hubs. They're not going to say what they're doing. They're not calling their shots for security reasons. But they're going to demilitarize Crimea and make it so Russia's military is now vulnerable there instead of it being a strong point. And that's the situation on the front lines. We're going to get into the interesting extras here, and some of it will be U.S. politics, including the Supreme Court ruling, Ozzy. I've got some opinions. I've read some stuff on it. I'm not going to claim that my opinion is the be-all, end-all on it, but we'll go through it real quick. Let's go ahead and jump into let's talk about Trump and Biden for just a moment or two. They had a debate the other day. I think that you can reasonably state that Joe Biden bombed the debate, and Donald Trump managed to not quite bomb. He was not particularly amazing. He was not particularly bad. He was Donald Trump. So the end result was still that Donald Trump looked really good on the debate stage after that deal. Now, they did discuss Crimea for a little bit there. In this case, Donald Trump claimed that Russia would never have invaded Ukraine if he had been in power, and that he would get the Ukraine conflict resolved before his inauguration. He says that Zelensky's basically been taking money from the U.S. and that Putin's conditions regarding Ukraine are unacceptable. And then he said that Europe spends less to support Ukraine compared to the U.S. This is not true, but nobody has claimed that Trump is loaded with facts in that regard. So overall, that's the kind of the Trump's comments on Ukraine. He claims he's going to make it all go away before he even gets inaugurated. Now let's talk about the immunity ruling that the U.S. Supreme Court did. This was a 6-3 ruling that rejected a lower court decision that threw out the claims of immunity over now they say over attempts to overturn the result of the 2020 U.S. presidential election. However, here's a couple of caveats. They sent that back for re-adjudication and to a certain extent. They said that for core presidential functions, ones that are enumerated in the Constitution, there is immunity from prosecution. So if he's carrying out the functions that are spelled out in the Constitution, then there is no basis for a lawsuit against him. So he can't be sued or prosecuted for those actions. Then they expanded that just a little bit. They said there was, I'm going to call it a second layer or even a hedge around presidential enumerated powers, where a presumption of presidential immunity could exist. Now, that In my opinion, that results in an affirmative defense that the administration or the president can make, stating that an action was done in his official capacity and therefore immune from prosecution. That gives a lot more. That's a lot. That presumption of immunity gives them an affirmative defense. However, it does not exempt them from a lawsuit being brought and a judicial review of that action to determine if it was done in an official capacity. Now, that is kind of broad, but again, this is an affirmative defense, in my opinion, not one that can be not proofing them against the lawsuit being brought. Now, the core enumerated powers, those are immune from prosecution. That is an outright defense. If he is carrying out that function and then bang, there's no way they can bring a lawsuit. But outside that, there's a possibility. Now, a lot of people have been screaming that, oh, this has absolutely gutted the impeachment. No, it's done nothing to the impeachment. The impeachment is a purely political process spelled out in the Constitution as a way to remove a misbehaving president for, quote, high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, misdemeanors does not mean a misdemeanor parking ticket. It does not mean a misdemeanor, petty larceny or something like that. Misdemeanor, I can't really express it well, but think of it as demeanor. They're what they do. And I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say the president went out and, I don't know, shot a sheep on the House Speaker's podium. Just picking something weird, and then smeared the blood all over the place. That is not an appropriate action. It is certainly not protected from lawsuits or anything else like that. But it's also a misdemeanor in the sense that he does not have the demeanor of a president at that time. Therefore, that action could be used to impeach him and remove him from office. You could make a lot of cases for similar things where he did blatantly inappropriate things that would lessen the stature of the presidency and the United States of America. Pistol whipping a diplomat from another country, something like that, things that are outright actions that discredit the United States. Those actions would be subject to impeachment, in my opinion. Now, everything else he does as president is also subject to impeachment. You just got to get the votes. So there you go. Impeachment still fully intact. The limited immunity outside, not limited, but the immunity defense outside of his core functions potentially could ward off lawsuits. The absolute immunity for his core functions would prevent those lawsuits from being brought. I don't like this ruling. I don't think it's good government because the Federalist Papers indicate that the fact that you could bring a president before a tribunal for his actions is one of the checks and balances that were intended to be used for the Constitution. I believe, in my opinion, that the Supreme Court got it wrong. That said, I'm not a lawyer. I am not a Supreme Court justice. And in the end, the adjudication of these actions is going to weigh on the various judges in the future. It does not prevent most of the lawsuits from proceeding against Donald Trump. Most of the actions involved were done after or before his time in the presidency. Specifically, in my mind, the classified documents case. The classified documents were retained after his time in the presidency. and were sent to him, and he was retained them afterwards. That makes them outside of his official capacity as president. So there's a lot of things to unpack. I'm not going to say my interpretation is the absolute gospel truth, but that's my understanding and my interpretation of what the Supreme Court has done. Eugene states he'll welcome President Trump in the White House once again. And Lucille states she's been studying the immunity ruling. It's basic immunity provision, only for lawful acts within the scope of a president's lawful authority. The historical reaction of some is not justified. I will agree with that statement. That doesn't mean I think the Supreme Court got it right. Just that it is an interpretation that they made. So that's my thoughts on that. Now, Russian propagandists are not particularly favorable to either Trump or Biden, saying that the two of them are both enemies of Russia. There are none of our candidates there. Let me go ahead and flip this around here so you can see where I'm getting that from. Yes, indeed. They say that neither one is their guy. Now, I wish I could play this for you. General Mark Milley, who has got some issues that I'm not going to address here, made a statement. And I'm going to summarize that. I think you'll be able to see a lot of this as I talk. Soldiers in the military, officers in the military, they do not swear allegiance to the president. They don't swear allegiance to the Congress. They don't swear allegiance to anything but the Constitution of the United States of America. Therefore, if a president were to give an unconstitutional order, it would be the duty of every military officer to not obey that order, because their oath is to the Constitution, not to the man in the presidency. Even though he is commander-in-chief, they are not sworn to his service. You might look for this. It was on the Igor Sushko account, which on Twitter or X. Really well spoken, I think, in this regard. And it is a tall burden for an officer to carry. Let me see. That's just a video that I can't really do much with now. Ukrainian forces have actually taken a Zu-23-2 twin-barreled 23mm autocannon and mounted it to the roof of an M113 APC. They're always creative, the Ukrainians, melding the Russian hardware to Western hardware in ways to make effective pieces of kit. A T-64 BV crew captured footage of a knocked-out Russian T-80 BV through their sight, and then they also captured the subsequent detonation of the munition. I just never realized how hard it was to actually see things in that sight. That color would throw me off hugely. But that's, T-64 BVs. That is not a new tank, though they often are modernized in Ukrainian service. Alice witnessed the attack on a residential building in Dnipro, and her first reaction was, "Is everyone alive?" She was only meters away from the part of the building that collapsed. She said, "I'm scared. I don't know where to sleep. I'm scared that I won't come home, that I won't sleep in my bed. I don't know what to do." This is who Russia is truly impacting. Normal Ukrainians that just want to live their lives in peace. Here's a Russian motorized brigade, all motorcycles. Not much of a motorized brigade anymore, is it? Okay, that one's not loading either. I'll just keep on trucking. This is a great video of the liberation of Snake Island back in 2022. It's going to be hard to see on here, so I'm just going to go ahead and bypass it. If you get the chance, go over to Noel Reports on Twitter and check it out. I can't paste you the link right now because it's on my computer, not on my phone. Nigel Farage, the British Eurosceptic, was trolled during a presentation, and I'm not sure if we'll get the video or not, but a group dropped down a poster up here in the corner that said that was of Putin, saying he approved of Nigel Farage. Now, Farage, a British politician, here we go. I love Nigel. Here it is, coming right here. He is pro-Russia, says that the West is the one that started the whole war. And so they tried to troll him with this poster. They weren't able to rip it down either. So it stayed up there, as I understand it, for the rest of his presentation. Another article I would love to share with you. It's considering how we're doing today, I'm going to have to skip it. If you go to the Kiev Independent, look for this article here. They talk about the energy workers and the actions they've had to take when their facilities have been bombed. Even now, they are working day and night to restore service in their thermal power plants. It's a tall order to do so and difficult for them. But each bit is a bit of heroic work each day. I think they've even got a picture of the inside of one, which is going to be hard to see. Get close. This would be a control room here, utterly destroyed by Russia's attacks. Ukraine-born Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spartz was charged with a weapons violation at Dulles Airport in Virginia. She was carrying an unloaded pistol in her carry-on baggage, which is definitely against the law. By the way, Victoria Spartz is anti-Ukraine in the sense that she is calling for Putin to successfully invade the place. This is talking about the elections in the European Union. Now, let me just go ahead and flip over here and talk to you for a moment or two. There was a significant, as they would say, rightward shift in European elections recently, where they call them right-wing parties, but if you look at the overall effect, which is what this is coming to, this opinion piece, is that rather than going to the right, it was not a major right turn, it was a move to the center, more of a centrist political change here. So overall, the people that are saying the sky is falling over in Europe are just as wrong as those that are claiming that nothing happened at all. But this is a change in the overall politics. From a U.S. perspective, it would be moving from the left to a more center or centrist position compared to what they were before, which was a pretty leftward position. Oof, get back over here. I'm almost done, guys. I've got three more. Over in, let me see, I believe it was Arizona, or no, it was Mexico. It was in Mexico. A enormous rift opened in the ground in Mexico. It's a 7-kilometer long, that'd be about 4 miles, and it was about 1 to 3 meters wide and 4 meters deep. This crack appeared after heavy rains. Quite the shocker for the people of Mexico. This is another video I was going to share, but we can skip that. This one I wish I could share, but this man traveled 1,000 kilometers, more than that, to return to Ukraine from the occupied part of the Kherson region. He has kids in Odessa. He walked much of that distance, obviously not all 1,000 kilometers, but the last little bit was getting across the line so that he could once again return to Ukraine, return to his family, and away from Russian oppression. So that is everything for today. thank you all for joining me. I do know that this was a tougher than average stream today with everything going on, but understand I appreciate you sticking it out with me and always appreciate everything you comment, everything you say. It makes these streams wonderful. And on that note, you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.